Hi and welcome to Project Doorway episode number 5. And in this particular episode we are going to be looking at non-human intelligences, their capabilities and deception within contact type cases. So when we go through history we find lots of different things, paintings, tapestries, statues, writings, scriptures, information pertaining to contact with non-human intelligences. Now, they come in many shapes and many forms, as you can imagine. And a lot of these things have been represented in sculptures, not just in the ancient times, but through to even medieval times and even current times. As we can see in this particular image, the sighting of some type of non-human entity, in this case, some demon or entity of some sort, and angelic beings. We also have references in biblical times and in scriptures. In this particular image, this is an association to scriptures pertaining to book writing, where monks, hence the halo around the head, were apparently in discussion or conversing with these non-human intelligences. And this one, it represents some type of beast that was relaying information to him pertaining to the information going into this book. Now, this is very similar to what is referred to as the Devil's Bible, which was a monk that was imprisoned, and he claimed to have been conversing with the demons or the devil and obtaining information. And he wrote this huge book, very detailed, with lots of information in it and drawings, interestingly enough, and it became known as the Devil's Bible. Very sort of similar incident. And also there is artwork which also shows these conversations or contact type stuff between religious people, in this case the Pope, conversing with a non-human intelligence and of course discussing around the information pertained in this particular book. Now, many recall this particular image on the left-hand side, and it represents Mary, as we can see inside the building, some type of object in the sky firing a pencil beam light down onto the forehead of Mary. Now, this particular beam is passing straight through solid matter. It's going right through the wall and into the room and hitting Mary on the head. And there's a little image just above her head of this kind of dove or partridge. Now, this is supposed to represent the Holy Spirit. And we will get into this later on when we get into season 2 about how the imaging around the Holy Spirit has been changed over the years. However, if we look at the image, what is really interesting here is not the object in the sky, or the beam of light coming down and hitting Mary on the head. It is actually the Pope, which is in the street, as we can see. And he is in conversation with a non-human intelligence, an angel. You can see the wings. Now, according to the information and the scriptures, this particular angel whispered into the ear of the Pope and convinced him to invade Constantinople, according to the details. And unfortunately, the invasion of Constantinople led to over 320,000 people put to death. It was a terrible act. It doesn't sound too angelic, really, does it? Well, there are many incidents throughout history where these strange chimera have even been drawn. When I say chimera, I mean that these things have been seen in sculptures in Sumerian, such as the birdmen. We've also seen many other things. The Sphinx is also some type of chimera. And it's a very known fact that a lot of ancient civilizations use these types of representations. In this case, some fiery chariot descended from the sky onto a shepherd or someone who might have been religious and conversed with him in regarding detailed information. Now, when we start to look at the source material regarding these incidents, it's quite interesting that the Bible is kind of taking a slightly different slant on this. And again, we will be covering that later in more episodes. But the big question is, are interdimensional beings, or ETs, our ancient gods from the heavens? This age-old phenomenon could be right under our noses, and we not even be aware of it. There are over 12,000 varied reported types of phenomena worldwide, dating back thousands of years. Could so many really exist? Or is there one single explanation? If you take into consideration that over the years, there's been so many different accounts from India and Russia, China, the US, Canada, the UK, all over the world. When you look at those accounts and these non-human intelligences, there are so many different ones. In fact, thousands upon thousands of them. So are we to believe that thousands upon thousands of very different types of entities are all extraterrestrial and all coming from their own prospective planet to travel to Earth? It sounds something a bit more like a Star Trek episode than realism. So how much do we really know about the UFO phenomenon? Now, Arthur C. Clarke once stated, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And it was also interesting to note that back at some years ago, when the CIA and numerous other official authorities were looking into the subject of UFOs, they used to send memos backwards and forwards to each other, separate departments, regarding this subject, and they used to outline this reference WSFM. Now, WSFM, we didn't know what it meant. Researchers were running around trying to figure out what the hell this meant. Was it some type of secret program, a project, a reference, some type of number, lettering? What was it, WSFM? And it was only later on that we got to find out it wasn't anything untoward whatsoever. It was simply a reference to weird science and freaking magic. So really we could say it's wise not to assume we have all the answers. I don't think the governments have all the answers. I believe that they're probably well ahead of, of us, the general public and the research that we do, even at top level. However, do they hold all the answers? When we start talking about the incredible physics that's involved with this phenomena and the paranormal phenomena associated with it, then, I don't think they hold all the cards. I don't think they have all the answers. Take this for an example. This is an official UFO document from the Air Force, dating back some years, and it lists this information. And in this particular paragraph, it states, thus, UFO sightings not only appear to extend back 47,000 years through time, but also are global in nature. One has the feeling that this phenomenon deserves some sort of valid scientific investigation, even if it is at a low-level effort. 47,000 years? I mean, how does that information end up in the United States Air Force official document from many years ago, pertaining to 47,000 years old phenomena? How did they get that figure? Where did they get that information from? So just how long has this phenomena been with us? It's been interacting with humanity on planet Earth. If we look at Sumerian cuneiform, it's some very interesting information on them pertaining to astrology and astronomy. As now we can see in this particular image, this is supposed to be a representation of our solar system according to the information we're given. The sun at the centre of the solar system, which is interesting because this is what Galileo said many years later, and was kind of imprisoned for his ideas. Everybody thought the Earth was at the centre of the solar system back then, and it didn't go down too well when he mentioned that. But when we look at the image, we can see that there's the sun, and around it there are 9 planets. And not only is the 9 planets of various sizes, but there are 2 outer planets as well, as we can see. It's also interesting to note that the planets are various sizes, such as these 4 kind of large gaseous planets, 2 other large ones, and 3 representations of planets which are smaller. But there is this 2 outside planets. Now, when we start to get into information more current, we came across these particular details. This is from the Guardian newspaper around about 8 years ago, and it states 2 planets as big as Earth could be on the edge of our solar system. So how did the Sumerians know about this information? I mean, they couldn't have even seen the other planets in the night sky. all of them, it was actually impossible. And so where did he get that information from, that knowledge pertaining to possibly 9 planets circulating around the sun, and the sun being at the centre of the solar system, of course, but also there's possibly 2 other planets on the outer ridge or region of the solar system. Now, there are also references like this. Now, we see this all over the internet. We've got Alistair Crowley's Lamb on the right-hand side. Now, let me just get this straight, guys. Though that you're going to be looking through the internet and seeing this image, and it's going to mention things like it's some type of demon or devil or whatever. That's just speculation. We have to remember this is a non-human intelligence which communicated through a ritualistic practice with Alistair Crowley, not just once, but more than one occasion. And it described itself as some type of interdimensional being. Not a demon, not a devil, an interdimensional being. And we also have these references on the left-hand side, and we'll see these across the internet. The typical alien grey. Now, it'll say alien, in other words, it's extraterrestrial in origin. Well, there's never been enough evidence to support that these things are extraterrestrial as far as I'm aware. I mean, in fact, the most recent detailed reports coming out from, say, the study from September of last year from NASA stated that in their conclusions that they are aware that UFOs possibly exist and are seen, well, of course they exist, and that pilots and people are filming them, authoritative figures, government and military personnel are seeing them and recording them. They are certainly aware that they are, there is an existence of UFOs, but we do not know what they mean and what they are or where they're from. Their conclusion, though, it's not extraterrestrial in origin. Not enough evidence to say or support the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Interestingly enough, the same thing was said by the committee from the Arrow, which is the Pentagon UFO program, and that happened about 6 months later, early this year. And what did they conclude? Well, they concluded the exactly same thing, that they are aware of everything that's been reported and filmed and seen and experienced, and yet there's not enough evidence to support their extraterrestrial in origin. In fact, it's not the first time these things have been said. We can go back to 1977 when, Alan Hynek said the same thing. I don't think they're extraterrestrial. Or even go further back than that, into the late 1960s with John Keel, who also said the exactly same thing. They are not extraterrestrial. And we've even heard that from Jacques Vallée, who also believes that these are far more than just extraterrestrials. Throughout the world, there are many, many variations. This is just a handful of thousands and thousands of variations that have been seen. The report on the right-hand side is actually a very early one from our organisation, MAPIT, which is Manchester's Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. And that incident took place, believe it or not, in 1973. And was well documented by 1974 of an incident of a UFO that seemingly came down in a school in Stockport, Reddish. And it's also interesting that the people who witnessed this, which was children, saw some type of humanoid figure, but clearly something not quite right with him. He looked unusual. In fact, when describing the eyes, they were more like the very elongated eyes of what we often see reported in drawings and by people of these alien encounters, or whatever these things are. Nevertheless, though, he was dressed all in a one-piece silver suit. In fact, it was very typical from the 1970s. It looked like he'd come straight out of a 1970s rock band. Silver suit, a belt, silver boots. He was apparently quite longish haired, had facial hair, and was going around and picking up plant samples and bits of dirt and things. And when noticed, he rushed off to his craft. The craft took off and off it flew, and apparently people reported this, and the investigators came out from MAPIT and conducted a thorough investigation and did this report. And this is the description of what the UFO was seen, looked like, and of course this is the figure that was seen at that time as well. Interesting report, because we do get lots of things like that reported around school grounds throughout the world. But nevertheless, though, it is just another one to add to the mountain we've already got in regards to the various thousands and thousands of types of varied aliens or entities or whatever these beings represent. So could it be that this phenomena has many different faces? Isn't that a better explanation to than accepting the fact that there are thousands upon thousands of these things, all from different planets travelling to planet Earth, where there doesn't seem to be any evidence to support it? According to tens of thousands of reports worldwide, is it possible that a single phenomenon has been at play for thousands of years, if not longer? There have been over 2,000 different types of entities officially reported, though that there's probably over between 12 and 14,000 variations in all. Over 30 varied types of greys alone. Experiencers from around the world claim to have been given information about where they come from, amounting to over 300 locations said to be out there in space. Now, it's interesting we said over 300. This is like people who've been told where they come from. There was a very large man that was seen walking down the road, clearly not human. He was apparently pink, funny enough, pink eyes with a grey suit on. And he claimed to have communicated with people in vehicles, saying that he was from a planet called Garnus Varn. And it's one of those unique incidents. So there's number one. And we can go through this time and time again. There are thousands of these, but some of them actually claim to say that this is where they're from. There's over 300 accounts of them, of these particular locations out in space. Are there only good and bad experiences, or is it just agenda? When I talk about good and bad experiences, well, what is a good experience? Well, the love and light. I have been interacting with these beings for a long time, and they've been fine. They've been teaching me. It's been good experiences. I'm not going to knock that. I'm not going to say good experiences don't exist. But is it really a good experience, or it's just that something bad didn't happen? It's a normal experience. It's just agenda at the end of the day. Also, we have to take in consideration that, you've got to level the playing field and call it for what it is, that there are bad experiences as well. So when people say it's all about love and light, no, it isn't. There are plenty of experiences that have been reported around the world that is certainly far from love and light. When it comes to these non-human intelligences, are they just presenting themselves in various different ways? And it is our perception of them changes so vastly. So could it simply be the same phenomena, but a different mask? And we cannot track the mask because it's forever changing. When we, in regards to Project Doorway, and when we are trying to do this research, we have to track the phenomena, just as my colleague says, Barry Fitzgerald. You have to track the phenomena. And when you do, you can track this back thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years. The phenomena has been doing the same consistent things for a considerable long time. However, throughout that process of time is that it's delivering themselves in various different forms, and they're perceived in many different ways, from serpent gods to strange creatures, reptilians, Nordics, human lookings, the Space Brothers, the Pleiadians, small greys, large greys, tall greys, little blue, little green, little men, hairy ones, tall, small, robotic ones, half robotic ones. You know what, the list goes on and on and on. But the phenomena stays the same, but the mask is forever changing. There seems to be a common thread that runs through the paranormal and ufological. Now, we've got that far to say, yes, there is absolute attributes of the paranormal phenomena within the UFO phenomena. Now, if we look at the Vril Society, which was founded as the All-German Society for Metaphysics in 1921 to explore the origins of the Aryan race. It was formed by a group of female psychic mediums who claimed to have received communications from the Aryan aliens. Again, a name, and also an association apparently of where they came from. Born October 31st, 1895 in Zagreb, which is in Croatia, to a German ballerina from Vienna, the medium Maria Orzik was leader of the Vril or Vrilian Society. Now, these were beautiful ladies of German Vril Society, and there were many of them which had long hair, and they believed that not to cut their hair because it gave them psychic energy or psychic power. A bit like the story of Samson and Delilah, the power. and the strength he got, because once his hair was cut, he lost all that power. It's interesting where that concept comes from. But the same theory here, that they used this and it acted to help them amplify antenna communications, mediumistic communications with these non-human intelligences. So the Vril never cut their hair, claiming that the long strands helped facilitate contact with beings from beyond. Now, the Aryan aliens were said to be living on, and here we go again with another planet now, another name, which is Alpha Centauri, and it's in the Aldebaran system. The German symbolism for the swastika also, which was also interesting when we researched this, was in fact an ancient symbol used all over the world, including Sumeria, which represented divinity and spirituality. Now, the Aldebaran designated Alpha Centauri is an orange giant star located about 65 light years from our sun in the zodiac constellation of Taurus. Now, when we talk about the experiments that have been involved in regarding communications and actions experienced through being able to be in contact with these non-human intelligences, there's been quite a number of them. The Livermore Laboratory as well in the US did a considerable amount of work, which we'll also touch on in a later date. But also, there were some earlier experiments demonstrating that the paranormal aspects of this phenomena can certainly interact in our environment. If we take a look at the testing of the ESP claims of SORAT, now this is the Society for Research in Rapport and Telekinesis, SORAT. And now this is 1965, and they claim to have been in contact with some type of entities that can divine the order of sealed decks of cards. A test was designed using a sealed deck of ESP cards and carried out after a protocol was approved. But not only that, they also had items placed into this, basically it's a locked off tank, glass tank with items inside it, and they were filming it. And whilst they were filming it, they were in contact with this non-human intelligence and asking them to manipulate and move things around. And apparently they recorded these incidents actually happening. Could it have been the first attempt to actually obtain visual record of these incidents happening? Very possible. But it didn't stop there, because these tests did carry on. And not too long later, in Ontario, Canada, a number of psychologists came together, known as the Philip experiment, to see if they could manufacture a ghost. Now, when you talk about manufacturing a ghost, we're talking about things like a tulpa, for an example. You believe in something so much that it becomes real and intelligent and can interact on its own within our reality. A tulpa. And in this case, they sat down for weeks and they generated this person known as Philip, and they created his lifestyle, how he looked, who he was married to, and it's a whole life that was just completely made up of this particular character. Now, what's interesting, over a period of tests of trying to communicate with Philip, apparently they got good results. There was interaction cases between this, whatever this thing is, intelligence, that claimed to have been this Philip, and they even reports that they may have even sighted him. Communications with him went backwards and forwards. Demonstrations of levitation or tipology and things like that was also taking place, documented, and people from that test were even interviewed and became quite well known and public. What was documented at the end of that was evidence that we can somehow interact with phenomena. We can bring phenomena into this world. In other words, it's conjured phenomena through our own belief system, and that phenomena can manifest in our reality. Philip was an aristocrat, an Englishman living in the middle 1600s at the time of Oliver Cromwell. He had been a supporter of the king and was a Catholic. He was married to a beautiful but cold and frigid wife, Dorothy, the daughter of a neighbouring nobleman. This is the sort of information that they piled into Philip's lifestyle and his life. And when those interactions came forward, it seemingly took on board the aspect and knowledge in regards to the information that they actually all created prior. So it was like born or conjured into an existence of some sort. Now, when it comes to conjuring phenomena and C5 initiative and the Philip experiment, there seems to be connections. The Philip experiment was in 1972. It was conducted by parapsychologists and psychologists. It was a study group which was conducted in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, to determine whether subjects can communicate with fictionalized ghosts. The scientific experiment was successful. Strange sounds, object movement, and even the possible sightings of ghostly manifestations, matching the fictionalized drawings of the actual ghost, was witnessed, proving that the power of thought can somehow manifest this phenomenon into the real physical world. Now, the same methodology may apply to the conjuring of UFOs. The CE5 initiative consists of meditation training on location. Be it meditation groups or sitting psychics around a table, doesn't seem to make much difference. So having 5 mediumistic people sat around a table during a seance and conjuring phenomena might not actually be different than having, say, 5, 6 or a group of people which are all meditating out in a location where UFOs been seen. And, you know, when they're meditating, they're wanting this phenomenon to appear. And usually, on many occasions, that can actually happen. And they can see these things. I don't think the conjuring of phenomena is an aspect of something, you know, that isn't real. I do believe they're actually manifesting the real phenomena. It was also practiced and used, and the tulpa phenomenon, in witchcraft many years ago, and was said to also have been successful. So dealing with this in this manner is like conjuring phenomena might be associated to the seances, you know, the Ouija board in some cases, sessions, the ufological phenomena, into the witchcraft and many other aspects of the of anomalous phenomena. It seems that we can and have the capabilities of conjuring phenomena, and have phenomena, the real phenomena that is, interact with us. C5 initiatives, this is the sort of thing that tends to take place. You get groups of people in a specific location, and they are wanting to experience UFOs being seen, or maybe interacting with non-human entities. I know Stephen Greer has been involved in this for quite some time, and many other groups around the world. It's also referenced as heist. But it's this type of communication and these sightings that people believe that it's down to just consciousness. Well, you are right. It's absolutely down to consciousness. It's down to consciousness in a way that it's creating a manifestation on the back of our wanting it to happen and our strong beliefs. And our consciousness is certainly involved. You know, as even on occasions that UFOs have manifested, these are kind of been referred to the light phenomena. Myself and Barry have been referring these as amber gamblers, because they're kind of amber coloured. And on this occasion, one apparently was seen and split into 2 and hovered over the sea, maybe a mile or so out, and seemingly was interacting with the people who were there at the time. Now, during these experiments, CE5, Stephen Greer has put forward a number of photographs, and there are quite a lot of these things, but these are just 3 of them. A light being, which is on the right-hand side, said to have manifested on film. Other things have been photographed in the sky and around people that are sat in the location. He believes some of these are various different types of entities. Now, if we take a look at the middle photograph, and the face of this particular being, which is apparently said to be an original photograph, which has not been doctored and captured during CE5 initiative, and we look at that and we zoom in, there is a very interesting similarity, I have to say, with the entity that appeared in Aleister Crowley in 1919, Lamb, during this mediumistic circle. The entity, which was captured during the CE5 initiative, has been put out by numerous people, and this was a meditation circle. So you can see that there is the possibility that these manifestations do take place and can be conjured in some way, even to a point of interaction. And yes, it's strongly connected to the consciousness, but we have to ask the question, what are they? You know, what are these non-human intelligences? Have we created these boxes with names in to call them a demon, an angel, whatever? Or is it just something that seemingly changes its appearance when it's interacting with humankind? Now, Aleister Crowley was conducting a certain types of tests in regards to conjuring phenomena. And he got heavily involved in Egyptian ritualistic practices and spent some years there. But then when he came back, he also brought back that practice. And this is when apparently this lamb appeared. Now, there was references to another type of entity, and there was some confusion over if the two are the same, Aswad and lamb might be the same actual entity, described by itself as an interdimensional being, which apparently manifested to Crowley and interacted with him. In fact, some years later, Crowley was said to have wrote a book with the assistance of information from this entity. Now, it becomes quite confusing because at the time people think, oh, well, it's all demons and all devils and things like that he was conjuring. Not necessarily. We have to ask the question, why did this not portray itself as some type of demon? Why did it communicate and say, I'm an interdimensional being from somewhere else? Is it another reality? A parallel universe? Who really knows? But Crowley was responsible for conducting these types of ritualistic practices. And there are many varied ritualistic practices that do actually work. We've been involved in some of these things, such as the ancient Sumerian, Enochian, ancient Latin type ritualistic practices, which does seemingly communicate with these things, and they conjure these things, or they have an interaction, they have an interest in those, like in that practice of communication. I wouldn't say it's the best way to do it, of course. It's certainly not the best way to communicate with these things, like hammering at the door. They don't like it. There are better methods, safer methods as well. But for Crowley and many others, they were conducting these types of ritualistic practices to converse and obtain information from these non-human intelligences. Aleister Crowley was also fascinated with the earlier work of Nikola Tesla. Now, Tesla also claimed that he was communicating with non-human intelligences, and he devised this particular piece of equipment which is known as the spirit radio. And while using the spirit radio, he claimed, Tesla, that he was receiving communications from non-human intelligences, communications that were apparently pertaining to advanced technology or mathematics or engineering or energies and things like that. It was about him obtaining information to help him create devices, energy, the world around us, all sorts of different things. And he claimed to have been getting this information from them. Now, it's very similar to when people say they have downloads, you know, and we'll get into that at some stage because it gets very interesting, because there are pioneers, you know, out there which were passed away now, which were inventors or associated to the rocket program, getting us into space. And it does seem that they all had somewhat of a helping hand. We will get into that at some point. There is, of course, Baki. And this is a gentleman who's been under the spotlight for many years. And he was communicating with these entities, whatever these things were, through an old radio, an old tube radio. Now, a number of scientists did actually visit Baki and conduct numerous tests. Now, this is just taking place during the 1990s. Most of his tests were, which were being analysed and watched by numerous scientists. At the time, the skull experiments were taking place in the UK, and that took place in Norfolk, in a place called Skull. We'll come to that. But in regards to Baki, he was communicating with these intelligences. And what happened is that a number of tests were carried out by people who attended. The communications were very clear and responsive to questions. So you'd ask them a question and they would respond back. Scientists came in and decided to conduct some tests by putting the whole radio inside a Faraday cage. And they had to build this Faraday cage, a very specific design, designed in a way that no signals would ever get in or get out from the Faraday cage. And be honest, they put it in there and they fired the radio up, and Baki communicated the radio from afar, and they communicated back with him, and you could clearly hear them. So it seemed that the Faraday cage was doing nothing whatsoever. It was a bit of an unusual thing. So they went one step forward and decided to take out the radio tubes out of the radio. So there was no way that radio could actually function. And still, those voices, through communication, bellowed out of its speakers. And the scientists are completely baffled. Let's take a look at some of those experiments that Becky was conducting and one particular researcher and what he had to say.
After this, scientist Harry Oldfield, a colleague of the Skull Group, attempts further communication.
We would like to ask the question of the appearance of your space.
Can you tell something about Skull?
Thank you. Will the work progress? Thank you. This is what I needed to know.
So when it comes to these types of communications, they do take place. I've been involved in a number of these experiments myself over the years. And there has been tremendous amounts of communication. Interestingly, though, where in some cases it could be direct voice phenomena, which seems to appear from above us. You saw it tends to be above us. If you sat down, it's above you. If you stood up, it's above you. Sometimes bellowing out from the corners of the room. Sometimes you can't tell if it's male or female. I'm not saying electronic, but it's very difficult to say if they're male or female. Recordings of them, though, it's interesting. Recordings of them show that they were not generated by human vocals, because they don't have vocals. It's seemingly produced non-vocally from vocals into the environment, which we hear and sometimes record. I'll say sometimes we don't, which is also interesting, which we'll get to. However, the frequencies involved for human voice, 20 hertz, 20,000 hertz, were not recorded during those sessions. These voices were very, very low. So lower than human vocals. And in some cases, even above. That has been reported as well. And it's not the vocals, so we're not getting it harmonic. So what is it and how is it? Is it a mimic? It's creating a vocal some way, and that is why that vocal frequencies are not found through analysis of these recordings. Very, very possible. It might have been the same for other pieces of equipment. Was those sounds really coming out of the speaker in regarding Becky's radio, old radio, or were they just generated somehow within it? And we were assuming that they were coming from the speakers. Lots more tests obviously should have taken place. But when it comes to these types of studies about the phenomena and tracking the phenomena, we have been successful at tracking the phenomena back and back and back, thousands upon thousands of years. And some of those earliest incidents are seemingly like serpent beings. I'm not going to say reptilians, because that's a different take, but are they all coming from all these different planets? Are they still interacting with us at this time? Well, yes, I do believe so. And they have been for thousands and thousands of years. They present themselves in various different ways. Sometimes children's experiences are seen to be animated toys. People have reported deers, giant rabbits, owls, all sorts of weird and strange things. Unusual creatures, the gentry folk, the fairy folk, the fae, small men, small creatures, the goblins, all those sort of things. You have to take into consideration that when you look through Irish folklore, the phenomena were still doing exactly the same thing then, but presented in a different way. We now have to look at this as a source of phenomena that's delivering various different variations of itself, perception-wise, to various countries. Sometimes it's down to belief system. If we talk about the alien grey, I mean, somebody asked me, where's all the Space Brothers gone? Well, do we really get many of those accounts anymore? Space Brother incidents were taking more place around sort of the 1950s. Of course, there was the Travis Walton incident where he saw some type of Pleiadian. But you know what? There were greys, and the Pleiadians also involved in the same case there. with Travis Walton. And many people at the time were saying, oh, the Greys are the bad guys, they're the nasty guys, we don't want to mess with them. And the human-looking ones, the Pleiadians or Nordic-type beings, were the good guys. But that kind of throws it into turmoil, doesn't it, when you've got an incident like Travis Walton, who experienced on this craft both type of entities. He woke up in shock, saw these three small grey-type beings, swung out at them. These things panicked and ran out the room, only for another being to walk in and take management, take control of the situation. This was a being that looked human, and he was maybe a Pleiadian or Nordic or whatever, but they managed the situation by placing a face mask on him, which apparently he lost consciousness and found himself by the side of a road. In other words, it was just quite quick, let's get rid of him. What happened there? Were these various different entities working together? Or did the entities, these greys, go out, run out the room and realise the only way to manage this is to change the perception of themselves to manage the situation? I do not know. It's one of those mysteries because we get reports of Bigfoot in association to UFOs, even seen on board. Sometimes humans seen on board as doctors and things like that at the time with these entities. Are they really? Are they really human entities, human beings on there helping these entities? Or is it just for us? Is it about perception? You know, making us see these things, making us calm down maybe in some cases, control our situation. Who really knows? But one thing is for sure, tracking the phenomena goes back thousands upon thousands of years. There are many, many varied incidents of this. And as we go forward into our next episode, we're going to be looking a little bit more into the skull experiment and the incredible incidents that took place of a ufological stuff in the paranormal. Not just paranormal and ufological stuff, but the ufological stuff in the paranormal. And we're revealing some very interesting facts. So thank you for watching Project Doorway. If you do have any comments, please put them down in the comments section. We will get back to you. And we'll be back with episode 6 very soon. So thank you for watching.